This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
N3 Radio in the mix.
This episode of Don't Tread on Me is sponsored by Perky's Paperbacks. Check them out.
Colonel Jessup, did you order the Code Red?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago and you curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives, and my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something. You use them as a punchline. I have neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps under the blanket of the very freedom that I provide, and then questions the manner in which I provide it. I would rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a weapon and stand a post. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
Did you order the Code Red?
I did the job. Did you order the Code Red? You're goddamn right I did!
Join your hosts, Mad Dog, Beach Ball, and Trooper Sam as they expose the communist infestation in our culture with Don't Tread on Me right here on N3 Radio, starting right now.
Welcome back, Sam.
Welcome back.
You're listening to Don't Tread on Me at N3 Radio. This is episode 37. Twexit, that's what we're calling it these days. Twexit, hashtag Twexit. We're exposing the communist infestation in our culture. We're recording today on March 10th, 2019. And standing up to social justice wackos with me today is my co-host, Trooper Sam. Trooper Sam, how's everything going?
It has been one of those weird days living in the country, bro.
That is true. So you have some new people hanging out in your squatters, right?
Yeah. Yes, big, furry, four-legged people. Llamas actually are in my backyard right now. We've got an animal rescue coming to get them. We know who owns these animals. He's made it really clear to us he doesn't want them. And, well, I'm not keeping them. They're not exactly the friendliest things in the world. They're kind of cool to look at, but I'm happy the rescue is going to take them. They know how to care for them right.
Hey, so I had a question presented to me. I wanted to bring this up on the air. Have you seen this device that you put? It kind of looks like a shortened rifle in the Glock.
You're talking about that thing, that carbine conversion that fits over a Glock frame.
That's
and
correct.
Slide.
Right.
Yeah, that's called the Micro Roni.
What do you know about this? Is this illegal to own?
Well, in most of free America, yeah, it's perfectly legal to own, as long as you get the one with the pistol brace. If you get one with a shoulder stock and you slide your Glock 17 in there, well, you just made a short-barreled rifle, according to federal law. So get yourself the one that has the pistol brace and you're perfectly legal. On the other hand, those of us that are caught behind communist lines, behind the Silicon Curtain, as it might be, no, not so legal here in California.
Wow. Okay, so it does turn the normally legal pistol into a shortened barrel rifle. I just wanted to make that clear because we have some people who are sharing it, and they wanted to know what my opinion was on it. And
I think it's an excellent device if you happen to live in a free state. Just California isn't one of those places.
I mean, it seems like to me like it's a lot of apparatus to like just put a halo sight on when you can like literally put a halo sight on a Glock already.
Yes, but I mean, you also get the additional stability and the greater sight radius, or just the ability to more securely handle the device, the weapon, because you can now actually, hold it in a two-handed grip with a hand on the forend, and in a very much a carbine style, and that's going to. And you can use a pistol brace. You can shoulder a pistol brace legally, and so basically you make it into a carbine, and pistol caliber carbines are cool.
Yeah, I think it kind of looks cool, but I want people to realize I don't think that you get any extra advantage of like barrel length. I think
you won't increase the barrel length, but you will increase the stability. You're going to increase the accuracy just because the aiming platform is more stable. That's where you'll get your accuracy gains from.
But if you are living in the state of California, generally,
please don't do this. Please don't do this.
No, if you do have one, don't tell anybody about it. Don't post on social media.
Seriously.
So it's been opening weekend for Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel has proved to, as the activists would say, beat the trolls up. It's right now it's on track for making $455 million worldwide, and doing very well. So we lost. If you're a part of the Captain Marvel boycott, they went woke and didn't go broke. But we want to.
I think we're still going to be waiting to see what happens on that. I mean, do they make enough to make it back, including the marketing? I don't know.
Usually,
they've made production costs back, but have they made back their marketing costs? If they come in under that, it's still a loser.
$455 million generally covers most marketing. Now, I think that in retaliation for the negative press, I think they did up the marketing costs. But, I mean, if it makes anything next week, it will pretty much, I think, will be outside the marketing cost of what a movie of this type generally makes. However, they did a lot. They did a lot to keep this movie from sinking. They may have dumped a lot more money into the marketing. I mean, it was everywhere you could possibly look in the last 2 days. I mean, I've never seen a movie marketed as hard. But then again, over here at Don't Tread on Me, we're paying attention because we consider ourselves part of the Comics Gate and Fandom Menace.
I didn't really used to consider myself part of that, but you have really dragged me down the rabbit hole now. And now I'm paying attention and I'm noticing these things.
Well, I mean, that's what the intention of this show is to do, is to show people where their kids are being indoctrinated. It's not just in the school room, in the classroom. It's everywhere. It's being pumped to them 24/7. False flag information left and right, and what's interesting is the direction that these companies will go to, save something like this, instead of just coming out and saying, hey, like, basically, our actress misspoke, or she went across the line and said things that were, were not the were not the opinion of the parent company. They went all full bore, and they went out of their way to save this film. And what's interesting is we have a clip from Ethan Van Sciver here from an sci-fi writer on integrity. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go play that right now, and we're gonna see what people have to think about this.
Everybody in our industry occasionally has to play softball, occasionally has to, look the other way a little bit. Everybody has to do it.
Wait, returning what? Like a movie that's
in the sense that,
or?
I hated a movie, but I won't say that I hated the movie. Or an actor behaved a sort of way, and you don't want to, put it out there that happened.
Right, because you might not get the next review.
Right,
next
so
gig.
to some degree, everybody in our industry that is a part of this quote-unquote access media has to sort of decide which battles they want to pick.
You've just heard the voice of Dan Roth from Sci-Fi.com, registered reviewer on Rotten Tomatoes. Dan has one job: to review movies honestly, presuming that he has good taste and an understanding of film and storytelling, and to tell his readers and listeners the truth, his honest and actual opinion, no matter what. That's Dan's one job. He only had one job, as the old meme goes, and he blew it. Listen to him casually admit to betraying his audience's trust. Listen to him explain why he needs continued access. Dan will sell you out with lies and half-truths so that he can go to parties and events and see bad movies earlier, hobnob with directors and actors. Why, betraying your trust is just a means to that end. In a conversation on Sci-Fi.com about Captain Marvel, Dan tells you that even if he hated a movie, he might not tell you. Does he mean Captain Marvel? Dan says that even if an actor behaved a certain way, he doesn't want to put it out there that happened. Why, does he mean Brie Larson? He has to, quote, look the other way a little bit. Everybody has to, he says. Is that so? Does everyone in the access media betray the fans? Is the garbage tier shill media everything I say it is? It sure seems that way. The movie review aggregate website Rotten Tomatoes disabled its fan feedback feature, the Wanna See rating, which prevented moviegoers, who they now seem comfortable in calling trolls, from clicking "I don't want to see this" on Captain Marvel. Rotten Tomatoes quickly denied the suspicious timing of this sudden change having anything to do with the troubled Disney movie, but one can't help but to find it odd. Why do so many media sites seem intent on protecting Captain Marvel and Brie Larson? Is it only about money? Well, that would certainly be crooked, but at least it'd be understandable. I think it's about something else. I think it's about ideology. All of these weirdos seem to look the same, sound the same, and espouse the same crap. It's all far left-wing hatred. This is Danny Roth. This is the guy who you might accidentally be taking an opinion from. Look at this. The Last Jedi is objectively good cinema. Visually arresting, emotionally resonant, and profoundly relevant. The original trilogy was the condemnation of the Vietnam War. The prequels were about Bush and Cheney, and The Last Jedi calls out every Star Wars fan who went right-wing anyway. Now that's really annoying. What's even worse is that he's illustrated his post with Luke Skywalker drinking the green space cow booby milk. He doesn't care about Star Wars. He doesn't care about Luke Skywalker. He cares about calling Star Wars fans Nazis. Amazingly, this guy isn't even trying to hide the political ideology of these Star Wars movies. Look at this. Those cheering the perceived failings of Last Jedi's box office do so, not because they think the movie's bad, but because they don't like the politics of the people who made it. They claim Johnson ruined Star Wars, but are themselves the ones who are ruining it for political reasons. Well, that's perfectly sane, perfectly... Destroy the right wing! Oh, woof, all right. Why is this goblin being employed by Sci-Fi.com? Well, let's ask the EIC, Adam Swiderski. On second thought, let's not. Is this all becoming clear yet? Are you starting to see the outline of what's going on here? I've been saying it all along, but far left-wing lunatics and agitators have invaded every aspect of pop culture. They're setting up shop. They're ruining movies, video games, comics. They're ruining the toy business. They're ruining every aspect of entertainment, and they've invaded and are ruining and compromising the media that reports on all of those as well. And when they're called out on it, when you actually catch them doing this and accuse them of being far lefties, SJWs who are ruining pop culture, and punish them by not going to the movies, not purchasing their product, and letting other people know just how badly they've poisoned the thing that you used to love. They turn around and claim that you're the one ruining it for political reasons. These people aren't hard to find. They're all hiding the lower half of their faces behind fanboy tears mugs. They all do that. They rejoice in destroying the thing that you love. They high-five each other over it. They sell each other merchandise. And then they take selfies of each other drinking from that merchandise that celebrates how they destroyed your hobby, skinned it, and are dancing around wearing it like a skin suit. That is the selfishness, the ultimate egocentrism of SJWs. And don't take my word for it. Just go back and listen to Dan Roth talking about it right at the beginning of this video. Go listen to that again and listen to the selfishness of what he's saying there. He's willing to lie to you to protect far left-wing movies made by the people who grant him access to the cool parties, to the cool kids club. And if you don't like it, if you don't like him lying to you, if you don't like him compromising review aggregate websites like Rotten Tomatoes, if you don't like them destroying entire superhero franchises and laughing about it and high-fiving each other, then cry about it. This is the culture war, everyone. This is exactly what Comicsgate's about. This is what AnimeGate is about, or Weeb Wars. This is what Star Wars Gate is all about, and this is why the Fandom Menace exists, to fight these people back, to say no more. No more of this. No more of this abuse. You guys do your jobs, create non-political entertainment, escapist entertainment for us, for your audiences, or you're not getting any of our money. You're not getting any of our money at all. Now, because these people and their arrogance and their failure have invaded these hobbies and are perched there or squatting therein, ruining things and laughing at your pain, laughing at you because they destroyed Luke Skywalker. Look at this guy with his drinking milk from the sea monster's boobie. He's laughing at you. This guy is telling you that Star Wars The Last Jedi was an amazing movie. He knows it wasn't, and he's laughing at your pain over it. This is why we need to build up alternate forms of media. This is why websites like Disney Star Wars is Dumb, Bleeding Fool. This is why these great websites, Cosmic Book, is it Cosmic Book? Something or other? Yeah, these great new websites, these news websites that are coming up, we need to support them. Bounding into Comics, One Angry Gamer, and this should become the new mainstream media. And then we have to get out there and do this by ourselves. We have to make our own comic books. We have to make our own news media. That's what YouTube is doing. People are listening to YouTubers for truth. Why? Because we don't feel the need to deny you our actual opinions. On the contrary, denying you our actual opinions, our true opinions about things, doesn't win us an audience. It loses us an audience. Look at Mundane Matt. Look at these guys whose YouTube channels are completely collapsing. Look at John Campea. These shills have lost the trust of their fan bases just because it's clear that they don't actually feel they need to be honest with their listeners.
All right, so, basically we were saying this, when the Last Jedi came out, the critic scores were 96%, and then when the user scores were down in the 40s, it was chalked up to trolls and bots and all that stuff. So now
exactly.
Aggregates are coming out like Rotten Tomatoes, and they're going in there and they're purging the so-called bots. And I mean, let's be clear, let's be frank. Obviously, there was people who dislike the politics of this movie before there was even even a real situation. And they went out of their way to bomb the movie. But just with that said, there are people who are either preemptively or counter-striking, doing the same thing, making 5-star reviews and, pumping their political agenda out there. I mean, I have examples over here. So I have like basically 3 examples. The best movie ever. Dude bros need to shut up and stop voting down just because they're pissy at Brie Larson. So that's a 5-star review right there. I mean, to say that a movie's a 5-star movie is to say that it's perfect in every way. So I mean,
could not be better.
Right. I mean, it's the best movie ever. I mean, like a 5-star rating is pretty crazy. Despite the protestation of blabbering man babies, Captain Marvel was a great adventure romp, a great introduction to both Captain Marvel and Carol Danvers. Now let's make Miss Marvel movies, so I can't wait to see the breakdowns of female Pakistani American lead will cause the toxic incel fan base that Marvel can't seem to shake. Incels.
And I remember reading that one yesterday. I actually read all 3 of these when I was paging through those reviews after watching EVS's video on this.
Hold on a second here. Yeah, so I just like if you're going to make movie reviews because you're pissed off that the right wingers went and they did this, and don't counter and put out left wing dribble and then make accusations at toxic incel fan base. So the word incel, it means involuntarily celibate. It's the cuck word for right wingers. So if you get called an incel, you know what it is. I mean, another one is cis. You're cisgendered or normie. So that's another thing that these left-wing extremists, activists call us. Here's another one. Here's another 5-star review. I don't get it why people hate this movie. It is because it is a woman who plays the head role. This movie is the best. This movie does not deserve this poor rating. I can assure you if this movie had an actor instead of an actress, the movie would have been loved by more people. It's disgusting how people underestimate female actresses. I'm gonna hold it to you like this. I did not go out of my way to see this movie. I was never gonna go see this film. I was not gonna give Brie Larson $1 of my money. Now, obviously, people went out and spent $455 million to see this movie this weekend. I hope that those people enjoyed the movie. I really don't. I don't really hold it up against anybody who wants to go see a movie. But I mean, I have principles, and I can't throw my money at somebody who just who is flagrant in their toxic feminist bullshit. And that's kind of the thing that pisses me off about the whole thing. Captain Marvel Rotten Tomatoes purges over 50,000 reviews after review bombing. And this is from Matthew Muller at comicbook.com. Rotten Tomatoes has just purged 50,000 bad reviews from Captain Marvel. Now, they mean bad reviews. So, like, I think right there off the bat, they're trying to, make it look like 50,000 of them were bot reviews, which was not the case. Not bad as in negative, mind you. It's because it happens all the time and it's part of the process. No, these are part of the review bomb. So,
which instantly just invalidates any idea that might actually be behind that. Automatically, this is some kind of hive mind attack and should be thus discredited and ignored.
A collective and targeted attack. And I just think it was like people who went out of their way. I mean, I'm sure there was people who went out of their way to go ahead and review bomb. I mean, but doesn't that happen for every movie? It didn't happen for The Passion of the Christ. Did it happen for the Dinesh D'Souza movie? I absolutely believe so. Illegitimate reviews intentionally aimed at lowering the score that can be affected by such a campaign. The audience score. This has become noticeable once Rotten Tomatoes saw the overall number of user reviews for Captain Marvel sat around 58,000, which is way above the norm for a movie. And I would say like the How to Train Your Dragon sequel movie that just came out has 51,000 reviews. To put that in perspective, people were going out of their way to review this movie. But you got to understand there was a counter balance where people were going out of their way to put positive reviews as if we read. To put that into perspective, Avengers: Infinity War had a total of 53,000 reviews over its entire run. But there's no way that many people have seen Captain Marvel after one day of its release. I think it is possible that but it's not possible that 53,000 or 50,000 people went out of their way to.
Well, you doesn't matter. Oh, crap! Hang on, just a sec. My whole audio setup just fell on the floor.
Okay. We're good. Get a hold.
However many people actually went to the theater to see this movie, only a fraction of those are ever going to make a review. That's just a fact. Because you're only going to get a fraction that actually care enough to say something about it.
Right.
Except in the instance where something is really, really good
or really, really bad.
Really, really bad.
Right. So I think you have those virtual single people who went out of their way to give it a 5-star review, and then you had those people that were part of this campaign to dump the movie the best they could. I mean, I went out of my way before they removed the ability to put interest into the movie. I went and I down interested the movie myself because of specifically what Brie Larson said, and the fact that the activist media was all behind this movie, and the way they were pushing it became more important. It became too big to fail. And so I wanted to put my voice out there.
And what else is that interest setting intended to indicate anyway? If there's something about the movie that stinks, i.e. the lead has done something ridiculously unpopular, like, I don't know, if you had Brie Larson climb into a school bus and plow it off a cliff while jumping out of a parachute, well, I got a feeling a lot of people wouldn't want to see the movie then either, and nobody would argue about it.
Right. Well, and I don't think it would be even needing to go to Rotten Tomatoes to click a button, but I wanted to voice my concern, and I thought that was the best way to do it, and I thought that method was a good, I mean, if it's going to inspire a social justice warrior to go see a movie because I decided I'm not going to see a movie, then so be it. I hope they enjoyed the movie. I hope that they got their money's worth, But don't come back and say it was the best movie ever when clearly, even the shill media is not reviewing the movie like that. I had somebody who I think is a like-minded friend of mine kind of attack me on social media saying, well, you're not even seeing the movie. How can you review it? How can you give it a good, bad review? I said, I'm not going to see the movie, first of all. I'm not paying to see this movie. I'm not going to. And if you did, I hope you enjoyed it. But I'm not going to believe that it's the best movie ever because it's obvious in the reviews of the people who are unwilling to give it a bad review on what they're saying, because they're not giving it. It's in the wording, and then you have to interpret that for yourself. I'm not going to be able. I can lead you to the water. I can tell you where to find a review, but I'm not going to try. I'm not going to go out of my way to convince you that the way the reviews are written, it's obvious that But I mean, the current evidence of what the sci-fi writer in the Eat the Vet Skyver video is a perfect example of why they do what they do. They get these critics get access to parties and actors and that me and Trooper Sam obviously we don't get, and we're not necessarily in that world where we would get that kind of access. So our integrity is in line, or their integrity isn't, and they are clear. They have to refrain from shitting on bad movies for the simple purpose of continuing to get that access.
Now, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
You say there's no way you'll see this movie, even when it comes on Netflix, because I know we both pay for Netflix.
Well, I mean, I don't have really much of a choice because I already currently pay for Netflix.
But I mean, when it comes on, will you just like give it a watch just to see if it's really as horrible as some of these reviews have made out? Because I've seen some reviews, and you know, Joe, outside of the show, you and I have talked about that friend of mine who, sort of an amateur movie reviewer, and he always shares his movie reviews with friends on Facebook. And I usually take his word pretty much as gospel. He's a really smart guy. He's architect. He designs buildings. He designs amusement park rides. He designs amusement park attractions. And he's a homosexual man, too. But he really seems to get movies. And I've often made decisions on whether I'm going to see something just based on his reviews, which are usually no more than 1 or 2 paragraphs. And he hated this thing.
Well,
and that we're not even talking from a social justice standpoint. It's just that he knows a good movie and a bad movie when he sees it. And I'm still probably going to watch it on Netflix when it hits, just because I want to see, could it really be that bad? It's kind of a morbid fascination thing at this point.
So to answer your question from my perspective, when it comes on Netflix or when it's on cable on demand or whatever, I will absolutely give it a shot. I will check it out. I'll probably have seen Infinity War by that time. I'm assuming Infinity War will be out before.
Yeah, Endgame should be out by the time we're seeing this on Netflix.
Yeah, let me correct myself. Endgame should be out before I see this movie. Now, I just don't know if I'm going to be honest. I don't know if my bias will allow me to see things in a clean fashion, just because I have such a dislike for the actress. But I'll tell you this: my son really wanted to see Ghostbusters 2016. I believe it's 2016, right? And
yeah.
Who am I to stop him from going to see Ghostbusters? But I did take the family to see Ghostbusters, and my little son loved it. He was 5 at the time.
It had humor that would appeal to a small child.
I mean, he thought it was. I guess he thought it was fun, but I mean, it wasn't nothing that really stuck with him. Like he was like, oh, now he's the most biggest Ghostbuster fan. But to me, I had heard all the crap about Ghostbusters from the beginning, and I was like kind of scratching my head, like, why didn't they make this connected to the canon of the original Ghostbusters? And I had a problem with that. But I watched the movie. I thought it was fair. It did annoy me when they brought in the original characters and had them play alternate.
Just extras, basically.
Right. It really bugged me, and I just thought the movie was mediocre. And I don't think that the humor hit for me and all those stuff. And I didn't have all that much invested in destroying Ghostbusters. I think it's a bad movie. I think ultimately in the end,
and I think that was more about bad writing than anything else. It could have been a really good story. It just
they could have made all those. They could have made
whoever was writing it just wasn't that funny.
Right. They could have made one of the ladies related to the original characters. They could have brought everybody else in as some, not related. They didn't have to be related. They could have had some of those old characters come in and pass the baton and all that stuff, and just move on from there. The Helmsworth character I thought was hysterical. Thought he was really funny.
Chris was, although it was starting to get a little irritating with the fourth wall breaking. I'm like, dude, you are not Deadpool.
Yeah. I was having that kind. Yeah, I have to really think back to the movie because I only saw it once in the movie theater. But I mean, to let people understand, we had these similar problems during the release of that movie, and I not only bought one ticket, but I bought 5 tickets. So it wasn't. It's not always a matter of my. Look, I realize Hollywood doesn't share my political opinion about things, and I know, like, for example, Mark Hamill is somebody who's very, very left wing, and I think he's left wing for the right reasons. So I don't, in particularly, get turned off by some of the comments that he makes, but when it's driven into overdrive and there's this toxic idea that, I mean, like, if people don't know the stuff that Brie Larson was saying, how she doesn't want white males to be
at the press conference,
right? To be at her press conference to criticize movies. She doesn't give a crap of what why A Wrinkle in Time didn't work for a 40-year-old white male because the movie wasn't made for him. I mean, like, it's not. I mean, this is the world of critiquing movies. There's, like, literally no limits to who can to review a movie. Movies are ultimately there's no limits. It takes nothing to become a professional movie reviewer. You literally could do it from home. So why is there white male movie reviewers, so many of them? I don't know. You have to ask the industry that question.
Well, you can also go, let's see, who graduated from school, who actually got degrees in journalism and English and what have you, that they could become writers of any sort.
Well, you know what? Just the fact that you brought that point up, I'm going to have to push back a little on that, because I think if you went to school to become a journalist, then you probably are the most you're likely not to be unbiased, in my opinion.
Well, this is true.
Journalism is such an. I think, honestly, most college degrees are, in fact, just full of indoctrination, and they really have literally nothing to do with, like, really knowing your craft.
I am praying to God my boy never wants to actually go to college at this point. I really just want to direct him to a trade school.
So to put into perspective, Avengers Infinity War had a total of 53,000 reviewers over its entire run, and no way many people have seen Captain Marvel. That's possible. As you notice, if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, at the moment there is a much smaller number rating, which is currently 4,567. So this was an article from 2 days ago, from the 8th. Rotten Tomatoes, what they don't want to tell you is with that 4,567, the Rotten Tomato user score was still in the 40s. And
even the 30s.
In the critical review went down to 79 at that time, which they didn't, but currently the audience score still sits at 36%. So it was 36% at that time. Fandango, President Paul Yanover recently broke. Now this is the thing. This is what I want to explain once again if you didn't get it out of the last show. Fandango owns Rotten Tomatoes. So the website that sells you tickets also sells you the opinions of the critics, which is a total conflict of interest.
Oh, no. What could possibly go wrong with this mix?
Right. So the fact that Rotten Tomatoes feels like it's the right place, or they're in the right place to go ahead and remove user reviews because they seem to think that they're bad or they're bots or whatever. It's a really fishy concept, in my opinion. So Yanover recently broke down the changes made after the review bombing of Captain Marvel, switching up how they interpret anticipation ranking for not letting people submit reviews before the movie has been released. But, to be truthful, you never were really allowed to release submit reviews before it was released. Yes,
all you could do is say interested, not interested.
You could leave a comment, but it wasn't considered a review.
But it wasn't a review.
The changes are not a simple reaction to OGs or some noise created around certain movies. Yanover told CNET. He said some adjustments are looking to be noise reduction, especially regarding high-profile projects like Star Wars and Captain Marvel, which bring in more trolls with them by nature, but this is part of the long-term site strategy. Since the changes were announced, Janover has heard that the claims that Fandango, who owns Rotten Tomatoes, has cut a deal with Disney to be nicer to its films. None of the site is owned by Disney, Janover said. No, well, you don't have to be owned by Disney to be scratching their back. So, and that's what the claim is. Nobody said that Disney owns Rotten Tomatoes. It's owned by Fandango, which is owned by Comcast. But we understand that there could still be pretty quid pro quo, and we know
that audio clip that we played earlier on showed that I gotta tell some lies in order for me to stay on the inside.
And that was particularly from a writer from sci-fi.com.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no way anybody could be foolish enough to think that applies only to him. Obviously, he can't be the only one that does something like that or understands that basic truth.
Well, we have to wait and see if Rotten Tomatoes can make some changes to its user ratings, as well as this problem is going to continue with the future. Now here's some two tweets, and I don't know who Zinc Crimson is, but
I've never heard of this. Whoever,
but I wanted to bring this one up because Scott Mendelson is notorious for shilling. He's got a license to shill, to bring up the Beastie Boys. But,
yes.
Fun fact, Captain Marvel already has 58,000 user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes with a shockingly low score of 31% average user rating, 2 out of 5 for reference. How to Train Your Dragon 3, which has been out for nearly a month in North America, has 51,000 reviewers. Right. However, when the actor of How to Train Your Dragon goes out of his way to piss off everybody, he's not going to draw the amount of negative or positive attention one way or another. So to argue that 58,000 reviewers are on there to troll the movie, well, there's a good portion of that is to counteract the trolling, which are just out there, slamming it with 5-star reviews.
And we're going to get a higher response on a movie like this that has such much higher expectations
than
we would for something like How to Train Your Dragon 3, which is good. People wanted to see it, but the anticipation was nowhere near what this was for Captain Marvel.
So here was the point I was trying to make when I pulled this off. Here's the Zinc Crimson guy. They got rid of 54,000 audience reviews for Captain Marvel, and they're still in the 30s. Great job, Rotten Tomatoes. So at this time of the tweet, it was at 32%. So, I mean, there's obviously people who have a problem with this Rotten Tomatoes or had a problem with this movie. This problem is absolutely this is Scott Mendelson again. This problem for absolutely no one except Rotten Tomatoes. If they want us to take their audience user scores remotely serious, they need to do something about this. Well, this is what people were saying when The Last Jedi got a 46% user rating. There was no coordinated effort of people going out of their way to destroy The Last Jedi. It made $1 billion. It made $1.3 billion. So people went out of their way to see that movie. However, they came out of that movie disappointed and didn't go back to see it again. Hence not making the $2 billion that The Force Awakens made. So that's basically it for the Captain America. Captain America is doing very well. I voiced my opinion. I'm not going to pay for people kneeling down for the flag. It's just not my style, not my it goes against my principles. When it comes on Netflix, will I see it? Yeah, unfortunately, I pay for Netflix, and there's a lot of shit on Netflix that I don't particularly care for or agree with. But Netflix is getting to the point where they really have to put out some serious stuff. I don't like their Marvel stuff. Their Marvel stuff outside of the Daredevil stuff. I don't know if you watch any of that, but I really enjoyed.
Oh yeah, I
the
followed
first
that.
2 seasons of Daredevil. I didn't watch the 3rd season. I couldn't be bothered with. I tried watching Iron Fist. I got bored with that quickly. I got bored with the compilation. I got bored with Jessica Jones. I got bored with Luke Cage, and the 2nd season of The Punisher is just awful. So
Yeah, I hadn't started that one yet at all.
yeah, it's not even worth it. It's just garbage.
Now, I noticed we haven't discussed that additional video from Ethan Van Sciver either, where he discovered that actual hard evidence, although you and I have both attempted to confirm it and we weren't able to, of actual bot reviews in favor of Captain Marvel.
Yeah, so what went on is after these 50,000 reviews were taken down off the aggregate, Ethan Van Sciver, which you should go to Comic Artist Pro Secrets on YouTube, like and share, definitely. Ethan Van Sciver is putting out some good stuff out there. He was able to find where they were bot reviewing the same review over and over again by different accounts. So he was able to point that out. Now, both of myself and Sam, we did our own investigation. That's where I pulled up the tweets that the reviews.
Those 3 reviews
that I talked about earlier. I mean, I didn't want to go too crazy into this, but he was able to find the multiple, and I mean, he shows it up on his video. He was able to point it out, and it would take a lot of work to like fake that. I would think, in my opinion. But I went out of my way. I looked for those reviews. I could not find those reviews. Now, understand that a guy like EVS is very, he's very much the face man of the Comicsgate movement. So it's absolutely reasonable to believe that they're paying attention to every video he puts out there. I mean, they probably have lawyers going over everything that guy puts out because they want.
And once he put that out on a video, they probably went out and scrubbed every bit of that.
Yeah, they probably found that exact wording and removed everything that had that exact wording. But
then soundly beat the intern over around the head and neck area for actually being dumb enough to do that.
Right. But my point is that there's plenty of people who will actually go and make political messages out here and give 5-star reviews, because the 3 that I pointed out here in just maybe 7 pages of looking is obviously activism, not reviewing movies. So if they're going to go and they're going to remove somebody saying, "Oh, I'm not going to see a Brie Larson movie because she hates white males," then they definitely should be going after the best fucking movie ever. Dude Bros need to shut up and stop voting down just because they're pithy at Brie Larson. I mean, that's
literally whoever says Dude Bros.
Yeah, I know, that's probably some activist talk there. Right? So Twexit. #Twexit. So this is something that I've been thinking about for a while. I've brought it up. I called it Twixit, but I think Twexit is probably a more appropriate name. Would you agree with that, Sam?
Yeah, I like the tone of it better. I think it fits. It dovetails nicely into Brexit. It's good.
Right. So what this is, it is a call to arms, or a coordinated exodus of conservatives and libertarians for the purpose of platform integrity. Our mission is to actively remove our accounts from Twitter's social media platform en masse for the purpose of seriously injuring or collapsing the platform under its own economic weight and current infrastructure. By removing users from the platform, the advertisers would be forced to reduce the amount they pay for ads on the platform. This is an active rebellion to the lack of real free speech and fairness of enforcement and etiquette. The only way to get fairness is to hurt the platform economically and force all other platforms to take notice. So, in a nutshell, What we're saying is that we're open-eyed that there's a clear and present danger in the platforms that exist on social media that are supposed to be there for the purpose of allowing all people to have free speech and a platform to
break it down simply, they're deplatforming us. Let's help. Let's get off it, turn it into the useless echo chamber that they want it to be, and let that hit them in the pocketbooks.
So, in order to point out the facts, the Joe Rogan Experience this week had. Do you know who Tim Pool is? I don't even know who Tim Pool is.
I've actually been doing some reading up because I caught some of that from the Joe Rogan Experience. He actually got started out as covering the Occupy Democrats thing, and he was very much on board with the Occupy Democrats movement. We're not talking a right-wing guy here. Not at all.
No, it's just the guy who and I mean, like, I think even when you listen to the audio, you could tell he's a left-wing dude, but he's seriously believes in free speech. And he's
fair-minded from what I can tell. Fair-minded, intelligent, and rational. I would debate him with caution.
Yeah, he's absolutely loaded for a fight. He knows what he's talking about. And you could tell that the Twitter executives that are in the room with him are not ready for the questioning that he has. So
no. That was there was fear in those eyes.
So our idea is to point out a couple. So I took 3 clips, and they're a legitimate long amount of time. So the first clip is like a 14-minute clip. The second clip is a 20-minute clip. The third clip is a 10-minute clip. And what we're going to do is from time to time, we're going to pause and we're going to discuss what's going on in the clip. So, like, we'll find a little sweet spot. I'll pause it. We'll talk about what's going on, and we'll continue on from there. And we do have another clip from Project Veritas.
Veritas.
I know. I keep saying that. Veritas.
I didn't want to do that to you on air. That one just slipped out, bro.
No, it you know what? Here, this is for me.
Looking up.
Wrong, sir. Wrong.
Nice.
I don't know what you're thinking, you know, but you're wrong.
It happened, bro.
Yeah.
It happened.
Veritas. Okay, here we go.
So let me ask you, the rules you have are not based in U.S. law, right? U.S. law doesn't recognize restrictions on hate speech. It's considered free speech. So if you want to stand in a street corner and yell the craziest things in the world, you're allowed to. On your platform, Twitter, you're not allowed to. So even in that sense alone, your rules do have an ideology behind them. I don't completely disagree. I think, I don't want harassment. But the reason I bring this up is getting into the discussion about democratic health of a nation. So I think it can't be disputed at this point that Twitter is extremely powerful in influencing elections. I'm pretty sure you guys published recently a bunch of tweets from foreign actors that were trying to meddle in elections. Mm-hmm. So even you as a company recognize that foreign entities are trying to manipulate people using this platform. Mm-hmm. So there's a few things I want to ask beyond this, but wouldn't it be important then to just at a certain point, Twitter becomes so powerful in influencing elections and giving access to even the president's tweets that you should allow people to use the platform based under the norms of U.S. law. First Amendment, free speech, right to expression on the platform. This is becoming too much it's becoming too powerful in how our elections are taking place. So even if you are saying, well, hate speech is our rule and a lot of people agree with it, if at any point one person disagrees, there's still an American who has a right to this, to access to the public discourse, and you've essentially monopolized that, and not completely, but for the most part. So isn't there some responsibility on you to guarantee, at a certain extent, less regulation happen, right? Like, look, if you recognize foreign governments are manipulating our elections, then shouldn't you guarantee the right to an American to access this platform to be involved in the electoral process?
I'm not sure I see the tie between those things, but I will address one of your points, which was we're a platform that serves the world. So we're a global. 75% of the users of Twitter are outside of the United States.
Oh, right.
So we don't apply laws of just one country when we're thinking about it. We think about how do you have a global standard that can meet the threshold of as many countries as possible, because we want all the people in the world to be able to participate in this conversation.
And also meet elections like the Indian election coming up as well.
Right. And my understanding is you were also accused of being biased against conservatives in India recently. There was a report on that, as well as you held up a sign that said something offensive about the Brahmin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in that sense, even in other countries, you're accused of the same things that you're being accused of by American conservatives.
I think that the situations are very, very different.
All right, so I'm going to pause right there. One of the very first things I think I'm getting out of the video is they use the words hate speech, but they clearly don't have a definition of what hate speech consists of. And because they're using the world as a standard, the hate speech definition is like based on on countries that maybe have a different interpretation of what hate speech is.
And in that respect, let's face it, if they're going to be operating in different countries, they've got to be cognizant of what the laws are there. The European Union is way more repressive in terms of public speech now than the U.S. is. But let's get away from that for a minute. Not having a definition of what hate speech is, not having a public one, means that they're not bound to any standard. Not being bound to a standard means they could be arbitrary, capricious, and ideologically bent. That gives them the freedom to just deal with speech the way they want to, as opposed to in a way that is fair and unbiased.
Yeah, it's a rule as I go kind of mentality that exists within the Twitter community. So
I wouldn't object, just like Tim wouldn't. I don't object to the idea of quashing down some hate speech. Number one, because as of yet, we still haven't had some kind of ruling that Twitter and Facebook and like that are some kind of digital commons and thus under the rule of the First Amendment. These are still private commercial entities, and in order to be commercially viable, I'd say, yeah, you want to have some rules and be able to control some of what's said on there just so you can protect the value of your company and, protect your revenue. I would say that's okay. Unfortunately, that's not what's actually happening.
Well, but it also there has to be a standard that across the board on what,
and that's not happening either.
Right. So here we'll go.
Or in actuality, there is a standard across the board. It's whatever people like you and me say. We better watch our ass because we're the ones that are going to be targeted.
Well, I think
on the other side of the divide, not so much.
I think the thing that will clearly point out is that the misunderstanding that somehow protected classes means there's fairness across the board. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start it back up.
And I don't think that the ideologies in play are the same at all.
Well, so the reason
can we clarify that? Because I'm not aware of the case.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but we did have our Vice President of Public Policy testify in front of Indian Parliament a couple of weeks ago, and they were really focused on election integrity and safety and abuse and harassment of women and political figures and the likes.
So my concern, I guess, is I recognize you're a company that serves the world, but as an American, I have a concern that the democracy I live in, the Democratic Republic, and the democratic functions are healthy. One of the biggest threats is, Russia, Iran, China. They're trying to meddle in our elections using your platform, and it's effective. So much so that you've actually come out and removed many people. Covington was apparently started by an account based in Brazil. The Covington scandal, where this fake news goes viral, was reported by CNN that it was a dummy account. They were trying to prop it up, and they were pushing out this out of context information. So they do this. They use your platform to do it. You've now got a platform that is so powerful in our American discourse that foreign governments are using it as weapons against us. And you've taken a stance against the laws of the United States. I don't mean like against, like you're breaking the law. I mean you have rules that go beyond the scope of the U.S., which will restrict American citizens from being able to participate. Meanwhile, foreign actors are free to do so long as they play by your rules. So our elections are being threatened by the fact that if there's an American citizen who says, I do not believe in your misgendering policy, and you ban them, that person has been removed from public discourse on Twitter.
Right, but they don't get banned for saying they don't agree with it. They get banned for specifically violating it by targeting an individual.
Let's say in protest, an individual repeatedly says, no, I refuse to use your pronouns, in like Meghan Murphy's case. And she's a Canadian, so I don't want to use her specifically. The point I'm trying to make is, at a certain level, there are going to be American citizens who have been removed from this public discourse, which has become so absurdly powerful, foreign governments weaponize it, because you have different rules than the American country has.
So just to be clear, my understanding, and I'm not expert on all the platforms, is that foreign governments use multiple different ways to interfere in elections. It is not limited to our platform, nor is it limited to social media.
But the president is on Twitter.
The president is on a lot of different platforms, as is the White House.
I think it's fair to point out the media coverage of his Twitter account is insane, and they run news stories every time he tweets.
That's certainly undeniable. I'm just pointing out that there are a number of different avenues for this, and individuals have choices in how they use the platform.
He might have other platforms, but he uses Twitter almost exclusively.
And what I'm trying to bring up is that if Twitter refuses to acknowledge this problem, you are facing regulation. I don't know if you care about that, but at a certain point...
Sorry, which problem?
If you're going to restrict American citizens from participating on a platform where even the president speaks, and it's essentially you have a privately owned public space, if I could use an analogy that would be most apt, and you've set rules that are not recognized by the U.S. In fact, when it came to a Supreme Court hearing, they said hate speech is not a violation. It's actually protected free speech. So there's actual odds. So there might be someone who says, I refuse to live by any other means than what the Supreme Court has set down. That means I have a right to hate speech. You will ban them. That means your platform is so powerful, it's being used to manipulate elections, and you have rules that are not recognized by the government to remove American citizens from that discourse. So as a private platform, you've become too powerful to not be regulated if you refuse to allow people free speech.
You know, I remember a day and a time when I used to say, you know, at some point, the idea that you're not for illegal immigration is going to be considered hate speech, and you're not going to be able to push back against that type of legislation based on the fact that anything you say will be utilized as hate speech and banned.
And we see the needle being moved now with, a large segment of Congress is now no longer willing to stand up against illegal immigrants voting in local elections. Whereas just last year, it was a very decisive majority that said no. And we're seeing the needle get pushed over really quick at this point. And the only thing I can attribute that to is the left is scared that they're being exposed and they're not going to have time to accomplish the things they want to accomplish.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's a matter of pushing the goalpost back so far that like almost any opinion that you have that isn't in rail online with exactly what they want, it will be considered some kind of hate speech, some kind of cyberbullying. Okay, well.
But I'm trying to pick apart the connection. I think so. Yes, we do have an issue with foreign entities and misinformation, and this is a extremely complicated issue which we're just beginning to understand and grasp and take action on. I don't think that issue is solved purely by not being more aggressive on something else that is taking people off the platform entirely as well, which is abuse and harassment. It's a cost-benefit analysis ultimately, and our rules are designed again, and they don't always manifest this way in the outcomes. But in terms of what we're trying to drive is opportunity for every single person to be able to speak freely on the platform. And
that's absolutely not true. you don't allow hate speech. So free speech is not on your platform.
I said
speak freely.
Enable everyone. Create the opportunity for everyone to speak on our service.
Unless it's hate speech, right?
And in part of that, the recognition that we're taking action on.
So I think this is a very good point that he's making, is you can't say that it's free speech if it's recognized that even hate speech is considered free speech in this country. So therefore, if they make rules on hate speech, whatever their rules are, whether it be a liquid rule or something solid in stone, either way, you cannot advertise yourself as being a source of free speech if, in fact, you don't allow certain speech.
On the other hand, I don't know of anybody that's actually really fooled into believing that's true anymore. I'm pretty sure nobody on the left or right thinks Twitter is about First Amendment freedom. They just, pretty much everybody knows that it's a megaphone aimed in one direction and coming from one direction.
But if you listen to the executives that are there, they're still pushing that line. Oh no, it's
yeah,
free
but
speech.
I mean,
it's free speech.
We already know they're full of crap. It's just a matter of, to what degree are they willing to try to convince us?
Right.
Is that when some people encounter particular conduct, that we see them wanting to remove themselves from the platform completely, which goes against that principle of enabling everyone to speak or giving people the opportunity to speak. So rules are focused on the opportunities presented, and we have particular outcomes to make sure that those opportunities are as large as possible.
Let's separate the point I made about foreign governments was just to explain the power that your platform holds and how it can be weaponized. We'll separate that now. When Antifa shows up to Berkeley and bashes a guy over the head with a bike lock, that is suppressing his speech, right? That's an act of physical violence. However, when Antifa links hands and blocks a door so that no one can go to an event, that is also legally allowed, right? So what you're saying is that if someone is engaging in behavior, such as going on Twitter and shouting someone down relentlessly, that's something external to what happens in the world under the U.S. government. I am allowed to scream very close to you and not let you speak in public. But on Twitter, you don't allow that. So there's a dramatic difference between what Twitter thinks is okay and what the U.S. government thinks is okay, how our democracy functions and how Twitter functions. The issue I'm pointing out is that we know Twitter is becoming extremely important in how our public discourse is occurring, how our culture is developing, and who even gets elected. So if you have rules that are based on a global policy, that means American citizens who are abiding by all of the laws of our country are being restricted from engaging in public discourse because you've monopolized it.
Can I counter that, though? Because these foreign governments are restricted by the same rules. So if they violate those same rules, they will be removed. So if they play within those rules, they can participate in the discourse, even if they are just trying to manipulate our elections. On the other hand, if the people that are on the platform play by those rules, they can also counteract.
Unless their ideology goes in line with U.S. law and is legally allowed, as opposed to what you allow. So foreign governments can absolutely keep making new accounts and keep botting and keep manipulating. They can even post things that'll go viral and then get banned and not care.
Right.
But a private American citizen can say, here's my opinion, I refuse to back down.
I see what you're saying.
You will ban him. So we can see that at a certain point, you have a lot. Twitter is slowly gaining, in my opinion, too much control from your personal ideology based on what you've researched, what you think is right, over American discourse. If Twitter, and this is my opinion, I'm not a lawmaker, but I would have to assume if Twitter refuses to say in the United States you are allowed to say what is legally acceptable, period, then lawmakers' only choice will be to enforce regulation on your company.
Actually, Tim, I spend quite a bit of time talking to lawmakers as part of my role, head of public policy. I spend a lot of time in D.C. I want to say that Jack and I have both spent a lot of time in D.C. And I think from the perspective of lawmakers, they, across the spectrum, are also in favor of policing abuse and harassment online.
Now, this is the thing that blows my mind about this first clip, is her answer is, well, the political leaders are all for censorship. So, we're cool with that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the world they live in. And honestly, that's why we're here right now. It's why we're discussing something like Twexit to begin with. because of that inordinate power and that willingness to just crush a political or ideological viewpoint that you don't like.
So when it comes down to like, I almost want to say that like the whole cyberbullying thing is a bunch of bullshit, because everybody has the ability to, like, if I say something rude to you on Twitter, you have the ability to instantly block me.
Absolutely.
You know, even if it's a pile-on where multiple people are coming, you could just, you could put the phone down. And, I mean, if the argument is, well, then, children, don't always have the ability to, to reason and why are children on a platform of Twitter anyway?
Fact. And let's face it, we have parents that don't particularly monitor what their kids are doing.
I mean,
anyway.
Whether the
parent, my kid's been begging for a Facebook account forever. He's 10 years old. I'm not doing it.
Well, that's the thing. You, as a parent who doesn't give a shit about your child, has not allowed your son to have a Facebook account. Now, my 12-year-old, he's going to be 13. He has a Facebook account, and he rarely even uses it. But they have all kinds of social media outside that spectrum. But
I just haven't figured out how to keep my kid on Reddit.
But if my son, so on Xbox Live, my son was he had John Madden football character stolen from him. He traded it for garbage. The guy manipulated him and made him believe that he was going to send him a better thing later, and never, obviously never came up. I have to eat that, and that was financial. That was money. You know what I'm saying? Like, at some point, we have to, we have to give our kids the means to be able to understand how the internet works. I mean, that's the parent's duty. And if you're not fulfilling that duty, then, I'm sorry. Oh, well. If your kid doesn't know to block somebody and move on, then I mean, like, you're kind of it's kind of your fault. You're allowing them to be in the world of the internet, so it's kind of your fault. Well, I don't want to get too wrapped up in that. I'm gonna the clip play
and bullying online.
Well,
those are things that people care about because they affect their children, and if they affect their communities, and they affect individuals, and so. I don't think that, and as a private American business, we can have different standards than what an American government-owned corporation or American government would have to institute. Those are two different things. And I understand your point about the influence, and I'm not denying that. Certainly, Twitter is an influential platform. But like anything, whether it's the American law or the rules of Twitter or the rules of Facebook or rules of any platform, there are rules, and those rules have to be followed. So it is your choice whether to follow those rules and to continue to participate in a civic dialogue, or it is your choice to not do that.
Absolutely. You've monopolized public discourse to an extreme degree, and you say my way or the highway.
Tim, we haven't monopolized it. There are many different avenues for people to continue to have a voice. There are many different platforms that offer that. We are a largely influential one. I'm not trying to take away from that, and we're a very important one.
You don't need to be the most important. It's just that you are extremely important. And that's a compliment. Twitter has become extremely powerful. But at a certain point, you should not have the right to control what people are allowed to say. No private look, I'm a social liberal. I think we should regulate you guys because you are unelected officials running your system the way you see fit against the wishes of a democratic republic, and there are people who disagree with you who are being excised from public discourse because of your ideology. That terrifies me. And we can take it one step further.
So, Tim, just so I understand, so are you suggesting that we don't have any policies around abuse and harassment on the platform? I'm trying to understand what it is you're saying, because I'm not sure I'm following you. So you don't think we should have any rules about abuse and harassment? So even the threats that you received that you
under
mentioned
U.S.
that we
law.
didn't, but you mentioned a number of threats that you received, and you were quite frustrated that we hadn't taken action on them. You think we shouldn't have rules that?
I'm frustrated because of the hypocrisy of when I see the flow of one direction, and then what I see are Republican politicians who, in my opinion, are just too ignorant to understand what the hell's going on around them. And I see people burning signs that say free speech. I see you openly saying we recognize the power of our platform and we're not going to abide by American norms. I see the manipulation of Twitter in violation of our elections. I see Democratic operatives in Alabama waging a false flag campaign using fake Russian accounts, and the guy who runs that company has not been banned from your platform, even after it's been written by the New York Times he was doing this. So we know that not only are people manipulating your platform, you have rules that remove honest American citizens with bad opinions who have a right to engage in public discourse, and it's like you recognize it, but you like having the power. I'm not quite sure at what point.
So just to get back to my point, so you believe that Twitter should not have any rules about abuse and harassment or any sort of hate speech on the platform. That's your position.
Well, that's extremely reductive. I don't know, that may be too simplistic. The point I'm trying to make is,
but that is the point you're trying to make. You're asking us to comply with the U.S. law that would criminalize potential speech and put people in jail for it, and you're asking us to enforce those standards.
Well, I mean, if you incite death, that's a crime. You can go to jail for that. So at the very least, when you have people on your platform who've committed a crime and you don't ban them, I say, well, that's really weird. And then when you have people on your platform who say a bad, naughty word.
Yeah, so that's the end of the first clip, and I think he's trying to get across is that whatever your standard is, you have to hold those standards accountable for either side of the debate, not just the side that you agree with liberally.
But also the very point you made earlier, that you always have the power to block somebody. Anybody that says anything that hurts you or offends you or what have you, you can block that person and their entire viewpoint is gone as so far as you're concerned. Why do I need Twitter executives interceding on my behalf to protect me from what I can protect myself from?
Because of the children, because of a group of people that shouldn't be on the platform to begin with. So what they'll do is they'll go out of their way to get rid of people that have a conservative point of view, or would insinuate that that a school shooting was a false flag operation, and they'll go after that person, deplatform them, but they'll allow children to do who knows what all over the platform without supervision.
Yep, the only real point is to silence a point of view rather than to protect users.
Right. So it's the means of utilizing this this means of silencing hate speech as a means to manipulate political discourse. All right, so I'm going to go into the next clip. It's Tim Pool on the liberal bias. So this goes specifically into what we're just talking about right now. So they have a rule that supports something that's completely made out of fairy dust and bullshit, not supported by scientific fact at all. And if you go against that rule, they even if it's part of your religious opinion, then you could be banned.
Now, I gotta say, I've got more than one trans friend, and I don't like misgendering myself, but again, if you're misgendered on social media, if you're a trans person who's misgendered on social media, you've got the exact same block button I do. And again, why do I need, or why does anybody need, the executives of a social media company to intercede on their behalf for something they have the power to take care of themselves?
You know, I just think that there's some people who use it as a weapon.
And in fact, there's the point.
Ben Shapiro went on a talk show and absolutely refused. And that's his shtick, and he's one of the biggest podcasts in the world. So if you have all of his millions upon millions of followers who are looking at this rule saying this goes against my view of the world, and it's literally 60 plus million in this country, you do have a rule that's ideologically bent. And it's true. You did the research. You believe this. Well, then you have Ben Shapiro who did his research and doesn't believe it.
Yeah, and I relied on the American Association of Pediatrics, and Human Rights Council and other.
And I'm sure he has his sources too for when he gives his statements. The point is,
but I just wonder if they have that context. And that's where we have also failed, as well as just explaining the why behind a lot of our policy and reasons.
I would agree, and I think it's fine. You did research and you found this to be true, but we can't simply say maybe Ben Shapiro and the other conservatives who feel this way don't know. We have to. We can't. The point I'm trying to make is it's simply whether you believe it, whether you justify it or not is not the point. The point is you do. You do have this rule. That rule is at odds with conservatives. Period.
Well, I think that you're generalizing, but I think it is really important, as Jack said, to the why behind these things. The why is to protect people from abuse and harassment on our platform.
I understand, but you essentially created a protected class if this is the case, because despite these studies,
one of the things that what you can't attest to is just because somebody says they are something doesn't mean they are. And it doesn't mean that they're not utilizing that as a weapon. And this is basically what it comes down to.
Listen and understand that Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
So I had a little bump. So we might not be starting in exactly the same spot, but we're going to go and continue from here.
And what these studies are showing, there's a gigantic suicide rate amongst trans people. Period. It's 40%. It's outrageously large. Now, whether that is because of gender dysphoria, whether that is because of the complications from sexual surgery, sexual transition surgery, whether it's because of bullying, whether it's because of this awful feeling of being born in the wrong gender, all that is yet to be determined. Mm-hmm. The fact that they've shown that there's a large amount of trans people that are committing suicide, I don't necessarily think that makes sense in terms of people from someone's perspective like a Ben Shapiro saying that if you are biologically female, if you are born with a double X chromosome, you will never be XY. If he says that, that's a violation of your policy. And you're creating a protected class.
To be fair, yes. Targeted.
Yeah,
if it's targeted
at or targeting.
Yes. If he wants to
conduct.
Hey, just so you know, if there's ever a point where you want to stop and interject, just say, "Hey, stop it there," and I'll pause it. We can
got it.
All right.
Yeah.
Express that opinion. He is fully entitled to express that opinion. If he's doing it in a manner that's targeted at an individual,
repeatedly,
and saying that.
Okay, but what about?
There is a gigantic suicide rate amongst veterans and certain law enforcement officers too.
Yeah, 33 a day among veterans.
Ultimately, I don't see anybody going out of their way to protect veterans, especially in the Twitterverse.
Not even a little bit.
So if I express my opinion that 2 X chromosomes make female, and then a trans person decides to target harassment at me, am I protected?
Not at all. Not under these rules whatsoever. This is a one-sided rulemaking that protects a particular ideology. Yep.
That's where the intent and the
what's going on with Martina Navratilova right now. Martina Navratilova. Why can't I say her last name?
I don't
know. I don't think I've ever said it. Martina Navratilova. Is it Talova or Trelova?
That doesn't sound
anyway,
right.
Epic, world-class, legend tennis player, right, who happens to be a lesbian, is being harassed because she says that she doesn't believe that trans women, meaning someone who is biologically male, who transitions to a female, should be able to compete in sports against biological females. This is something that I agree with. This is something I have personally experienced a tremendous amount of harassment because I stood up when there was a woman who was a trans woman who was fighting biological females in mixed martial arts fights and destroying these women. And I was saying, you just watch this and tell me this doesn't look crazy to you.
Go ahead.
Well, my point is, you should be able to express yourself. And if you say that you believe someone is biologically male, even though they identify as a female, that's a perspective that should be valid. I mean, this is someone's. This is first of all, it's biologically correct. So we have a problem in that if your standards and your policies are not biologically accurate, then you're dealing with an ideological policy. And just because, I mean, I don't want to target trans people. I don't want to harass them. I'll call anybody whatever they want. I mean, if you want to change your name to a woman's name and identify as a woman, I'm 100% cool with that. But by saying I don't think that you should be able to compete as a woman, this opens me up for harassment. Now, I never reported any of it. I just don't pay attention to it.
But going into like Meghan Murphy, for instance, right? You can call that targeted harassment if Meghan Murphy, who is, for those that don't know, she's a radical feminist who refuses to use the transgender pronouns. If she's in an argument with a trans person over whether or not they should be allowed in sports or in biologically female spaces, and she refuses to use their pronoun because of her ideology, you'll ban them.
Again, it depends on the context on the platform. And it's also not banned permanently. Like, you get warnings.
Well, she was banned permanently, but let's be clear about what happened.
But she was warned
because you explained it to me. What did she actually do?
My understanding, and I don't have the tweet by tweet the way that I did for the others, but my understanding is that she was warned multiple times for misgendering an individual that she was in an argument with. And this individual is actually bringing a lawsuit against her in Canada as well. So it is.
So you have an argument between two people.
Again.
And you have a rule that enforces only one side of the ideology, and you've banned only one of those people.
We have a rule that attempts to address what we have perceived to be instances of abuse and harassment.
She was saying
it's your ideology.
Right, but it is an ideology, right? If she's saying a man is never a woman, if that's what she's saying, and then biologically she's correct, we obviously have a...
See, that's the thing here, right here with the... with Canada, like, misgendering is a crime in Canada. Like this transgendered person doesn't have the ability to step out of this conversation and block the conversation.
That's what I keep saying.
I mean, I have the right to shoot somebody in my home if I don't have the ability to retreat, right? I mean, like,
exactly.
You have an ability to retreat. You know, I believe that I believe that some transgender people utilize this as a weapon and a tactic to go after people. And Twitter is the perfect platform for them to be able to constantly harass people who disagree with their political and ideological positions.
Agreed. And it's... Well, we already know this is why we're talking about this sort of thing, but I mean, let's just keep going further into the tape. I mean, this was a really good discussion. I just want to hear more of her on the spot.
You notice how she's like fumbling on her speech, like she doesn't.
Oh yeah. There's was at least once or twice in this conversation where she was left almost completely speechless. And Jack actually had to pick up for her because she just was no longer in a position to even try to defend anything anymore.
Right. I wish I did a little bit more homework and got the names down of who everybody is and what their positions are specifically.
I cannot remember her name to save my life, but I know that's Jack from Twitter that's sitting next to her.
All right, so I'm gonna continue on here.
Debate here. Oh. This is not a clear cut. This is not something like you can say water is wet, this is dry. This is not like something you can prove. This is something where you have to acknowledge that there's an understanding that if someone is a trans person, we all agree to consider them a woman and to think of them as a woman, to talk to them and address them with their preferred name and their preferred pronouns. But biologically, this is not accurate. So we have a divide here. We have a divide between the conservative estimation of what's happening and then the definition that's the liberal definition of it.
I think that's right, Joe. And I think what I'm trying to say is that it's not that you can't have those viewpoints. It's that if you're taking those viewpoints and you're targeting them at a specific person in a way that reflects your intent to abuse and harass them.
But what if it's in the context of the conversation? What if she's saying that I don't think that trans women should be allowed in these female spaces to make decisions for women? And then this person's arguing and she says a woman is biologically female. Well, you are never going to be a woman.
She responded with, men aren't women, though. And that was her first in the series of events. That's what got her the suspension and the warning.
That was one of many tweets that was part of providing context, and that was actually the second actually. Strike is my understanding. But
why is that a strike?
Yeah, why is that a strike?
But again, like it's the context of I don't have all the tweets in front of me. There were like 10 or 12 tweets going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that in the context of all of those, she was misgendering a particular person. Not that she was holding a belief or statement.
It was a public figure, though, wasn't it?
I don't know.
It was. So you're having an individual who is debating a high-profile individual in her community, and she's expressing her ideology versus hers, and you have opted to ban one of those ideologies.
And it's within the context of this conversation.
Yeah.
This is what is being debated, whether or not someone is, in fact, a woman when they were born a male.
I understand that this is controversial. I do.
Especially to a radical feminist.
I understand why people would not agree with the rule. But that being said, it is a rule on our platform. And once you're warned about the rule, to repeatedly post the same content is also going to be a violation of our rules.
Right, but the rule, this seems like a good example of an ideologically based rule. If she's saying that a man is never a woman, though, that is not in that context harassment. That is a very specific opinion that she has that happens to be biologically accurate. Now, I don't agree with targeting harassment on anybody, and I targeted harassment on trans people or straight people or whatever. I don't agree with it. I don't think you should do it. It's not something I want to do. But in this context, what she's saying is not just her expression, but it's accurate.
I think an important point is if I tweeted to you, Joe, you are not a hamster. That's clearly not a violation of the rules. However, if
I identify as a hamster.
Well, no, it wouldn't be clear because I know people who have specifically begun using insults of animals to avoid getting kicked off the platform for breaking the rules. Certain individuals who have been suspended now use certain small woodland creatures in place of slurs, so they're not really insulting you, and it's fine. But there are people who consider themselves trans species. Now, I'm not trying to belittle the trans community by no means. I'm just trying to point out that you have a specific rule for one set of people, and there are people who have general body dysphoria. You don't have rules on that. There are people who have actually amputated their own arms. You don't have rules on that. You have a very specific rule set. And more importantly, in the context of a targeted conversation, I can say a whole bunch of things that would never be considered a rule break, but that one is, which is ideologically driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we protect certain people, and don't protect others. And we allow harassment of people based on their political ideology. I have been on Facebook, have been tracked down and piled on in harassment campaigns by others because of my Second Amendment beliefs and other things.
Hey, how many timeouts you done on Facebook?
I've been pretty good. I mean, there was a time where the biggest thing is they needed to identify me. And I've spoke about it here on the show before, where ultimately they wouldn't allow me to log into my account without providing identification. And then they've changed my name to match my identification on my driver's license. And I am never allowed to change the name again. So even my excuse of being a law enforcement officer was not enough to prevent my whole name being posted on Facebook. And I'm sure if I try to, I guess I could make a new account, but I just don't want to go through.
Make it alt, bro.
I just didn't want to go through all that hassle because I have so many friends and, I mean, at this point, I could really care less. I mean, I utilize Facebook more for show purposes and show prep. I mean, that's really the case. But I thought it was really crossing the line that I had to send them a picture of my identification in order for that, and then I can't change my name even in a variation. I can't call myself Jim. I have to call myself Jack. You know, it's ridiculous.
I've had 2 timeouts on Facebook so far. Nothing on Twitter. Don't ask me how. I'm an asshole on Twitter, but I've gotten timeouts on Facebook for really kind of stupid stuff. I told one guy to eat a bag of dicks, and I got 24 hours for that one.
Wow.
And this one, and I wasn't insulting anybody directly on this at all. I just posted a freaking retard meme as a goof in a gun group, and 3 days off.
Now, what the interesting thing is that I've been pretty good on Facebook where I don't cross the line. And I think that's what brought attention to my account to begin with, is that they were targeting me, but they didn't have anything to get me on. However, I was using Mad Dog D-Tom as my name in order to, promote the show. But they wouldn't allow me in any variation. I had a couple different variations of that name because they kept coming back and forcing me to identify myself. And then it came to the point where they absolutely made me utilize my license, send in my license before, and now I can't change my name even if I wanted to.
Yeah, you should definitely create a new account at some point.
Yeah, I think I'm going to create a professional account. But I just don't want to go through all the hassle of a professional account.
Well, make this one your professional account and make the other one your advocacy account where you can just like say what you want and get your timeouts and whatever.
No, I mean, like I said, I don't really get timeouts for anything. I don't really.
Well, I mean, believe you me, you'll feel a lot freer once you have an alt you can jump to. You'll be able to say some real shit then.
Well, the more or less where I get in trouble is like I get in trouble in groups, and like I've been banned out of the Star Wars podcasting group because. Originally, I was defending somebody from cyberbully, and then when I thought that the social justice warriors that we all know that from previous shows were going too far and outcasting the individual that was guilty of the cyberbullying, they turned on me like they turned on me like I was a wounded fucking lion cub. It ate me up and then bounced me out of the group. And then I've been in trouble a couple of different times on Star Wars Geeks of the World Unite in recent years over my dislike for the Last Jedi and the constant barrage of SJW bullshit that goes on within the group and some of its administrators. Unfortunately, that's the way everything has gone. And this is what's basically, got me fired up and started this show. So I'm going to continue on here. We got.
Thank you for the feedback. I mean, we're again always learning and trying to understand different people's perspectives. And all I'll say is that our intent is not to police ideology. Our intent is to police behaviors that we view as abusive and harassment. And I hear your point of view, and it's something that I'll definitely discuss with my team.
And even in this case, it wasn't just going against this particular rule, but also things that were more ban evasive as well, including taking a screenshot of the original tweet, reposting it, which is against our terms of service.
Well, that sounds like
so it's more
protest.
the actions.
It sounded like a protest against your rule. But I understand you could ban them for it.
But people can protest any of our rules. We can't like let them do that.
No.
They can protest
agree.
any of them.
I'm not
they disagree.
I understand what you're saying, but I just want to make sure I point out she was clearly doing it as an effort to push back on what she viewed as an ideologically driven rule.
Well, the problem is this is a real debate in the LGBT community. This is a debate where there is a division, and there's a division between people that think that trans women are invading biological female spaces and making decisions that don't benefit these biological females, cisgender, whatever you want to call them. This is an actual debate, and it's a debate amongst progressive people.
So this show is going a way longer than I expected it to go, or maybe I didn't necessarily expect it to go. So what our option was we were either going to continue on or we were going to pick this up on our next episode 38. I want to bring up some stuff real quick. We are going to close out the show. We will come back and we will do the other clips on episode 38. We want to thank our sponsors, Third Eye Entertainment and Perky's Paperbacks for their support. I'm Mad Dog. You can contact me at maddogdtom@yahoo.com. Trooper Sam, where can they find you?
They can find me at Godwin Meter on Twitter. At Godwin Meter on Twitter. Come and friggin' hit me up.
N3 Radio is a non-profit teaching platform for non-professionals. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or professional use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
We'll turn to Perky'sPaperbacks.com for the best in... What do they have? Hey, how do you like reading a book? You know, an actual book. We'll turn to Perky's Paperbacks. Perky Paperback. How do you like sitting back and reading an actual book? You know, feeling it's getting a little awkward with the whole feeling with the thumb and the finger. You know. Still like the feeling of turning a page with your. Why don't you turn to Perky's Paperbacks.com? It's just not working. It isn't. It really isn't. Stop. Read a book. No, that doesn't work, does it? You know, when you could actually turn the pages and feel the I hate this. I hate this so much. I've done so many takes. I hate this. Old sci-fi, mystery, western, and other specialty paperback books, and you can find all of them once again at Perky'sPaperbacks.com to find the old stuff that nobody reads anymore. That's stupid. Wow, let me try again. Hey, do you like sitting back and reading an old paperback book? Well, turn to Perky'sPaperbacks.com for the old sci-fi, mystery, western, and other specialty paperback books at Perky'sPaperbacks.com, a special sponsor of N3 Radio and at N3Radio.com. Yes! Are we clear? We're good? Yes! Yeah, it only took less than 20. Less than 20 takes is always good.
It's time to start.
Rock concert movement number 1. The basic head bob. Ready, go.
The Artist Spotlight, only here on N3Radio.com. Robert brings you the best and the greatest hits from your favorite artists. Live Thursdays through Pacific 6 Eastern, only here on N3Radio.com.
Let the laundry hit the floor. Let the laundry hit the floor. Let the laundry hit the floor. Let the laundry hit the
A twisted reality for twisted people. A talk show for the truly insane. Join Robert and Stacy for some truly interesting talk radio on no excuses, no apologies, no regrets. Weird stories, epic music, and more. Live Thursday starting at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, only here on N3 Radio.